What if your diagnosis didn't have the power you think it does? Not over your love life, not over your confidence, and definitely not over your future. Because how you experience it isn't just about the situation itself. It's about the meaning you're giving it. And the moment you start to change that meaning is the moment everything else in your life starts to change too. Hi, I'm Dupree, and I help people to navigate life with herpes. Let me ask you something. Since your diagnosis, does it feel like your life has changed? If so, that's because in some ways it kind of does. It can feel like the version of who you were before doesn't exist anymore. Like something's different now, and you're trying to figure out how to move on from here. You're dealing with thoughts and emotions you may never have dealt with before. And it brings up questions like, what does my future look like now? Or how do I even move on from this? And this doesn't only happen to people who were just diagnosed. Even years later, those thoughts can still be there. The fear of being judged, the fear of rejection, and the fear that someone won't choose to be with you. Those feelings are real, and at times they can feel extremely overwhelming. I know that because I've been there. I believe the same things most people do too, that I was damaged goods, that no one would want me, and that my life as I knew it was basically over. And trust me, when I tell you those beliefs couldn't be further from the truth, because when I made the choice to look beyond my diagnosis and change what I believed about it, everything in my life started to change. What I once thought was impossible, like having a beautiful and loving relationship where someone chooses me every day, is something I have now. And it's partly due to what I'm about to share with you. So I'm going to walk you through 4 things that can help you start changing the way you see your diagnosis. Awareness, courage, acceptance, and choice. Because at the end of the day, it's not the diagnosis that defines you. It's how you respond to it. It's how you handle the judgment, the rejection, and most importantly, how you see yourself. And once you start to understand these 4 things, you stop seeing your condition as something that controls you, and instead, you begin to see it for what it really is. Just one part of your life, not the thing that defines it. So let's start with awareness, because this is where everything begins. Awareness is the moment you start paying attention to what's actually going on in your mind. It's when you begin to notice what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and the stories you're telling yourself about your diagnosis. Because most of the time, you're not even aware of it. You're just reacting to the thoughts you have that are running on autopilot, and you're believing them without ever stopping to question them. That's unconscious thinking. And when you're stuck in that place, your thoughts are the ones that are in control. But the moment you become aware of those thoughts, that's when things start to change. Because awareness is the beginning of transformation. When you can take a step back and recognize, this is what I'm telling myself, you create space. And in that space, you now have the ability to do something different with it. There's a saying, where your attention goes, energy flows. So if your attention is constantly on the stigma, on what society says, on the negative things you see online, and you're believing those things, then your mind has no choice but to take that and reflect it back to you as your reality. Not because it's true, but because it's what you're focused on. But the second you start to become aware of that, you can begin to change it. You now have the ability to question what you've been believing. You can start to decide what's real and what's not. And this is where your power lies, because you can't change something that you're not aware of. But once you are, you start to see things differently. So, what does awareness actually look like in real life? Well, it's catching your thoughts when they show up and recognizing them for what they are. Not the truth, just a story you've been telling yourself or a belief that you picked up about your diagnosis along the way. And this is where you have the ability to shift your attention to intention, where you decide where your thoughts go instead of letting them take control. So when it comes to relationships, instead of thinking, no one will want me, you start telling yourself, I'm worthy of love. My person is out there and we're going to find each other. But here's the thing. Just saying those words isn't going to change anything. You have to start believing that what you're telling yourself is actually possible. And more than that, you have to feel as if it's already happened. Now, I'm going to share something with you that may seem a little out there, but this is exactly what I did to go from being single to being in the most beautiful relationship of my life. Every night before I went to bed, I'd turn off the lights and I'd get all cozy and I'd look at the space next to me that was empty and I'd say, I know you're out there. I can't wait to meet you. And I love you so much. And then I'd close my eyes and I would imagine what it felt like to be in a loving relationship with this person I hadn't even met yet. I didn't know how it would happen or when. I just decided that it would. And I let myself feel as if it were already true. I did this every night for a few months. And then one day I was at a weekly meditation group and this guy started talking to me. We realized we had a lot in common and eventually he asked me out for coffee. Afterwards, we started spending time together as friends, and over time, it turned into something more, and we've been together ever since. Now, I'm not saying you should do exactly what I did, but what I am saying is that it matters where you focus your attention on and what you choose to believe, because the real shift happens when your attention becomes intention, and you start allowing yourself to believe in what's possible for you. Not what your past says, not what society says, but what you decide is possible. That's awareness, noticing the story you've been living in and choosing to believe something new. Next, I'm going to talk about courage because this is where action turns into change. Because awareness is where you recognize what you've been telling yourself, but courage is where you actually do something about it. It's where those new beliefs you've been creating start to play out in real life. And if you've ever heard of Dr. David Hawkins' scale of consciousness, courage is the tipping point. Everything below it, like fear, anger, guilt, those things keep you stuck in the same patterns where you keep feeling like your diagnosis defines you. Now, let me be clear. Courage doesn't mean the fear goes away. It means that you feel it and you do what you want to do anyway. Let's go back to what I told you earlier and the moment my boyfriend first asked me out for coffee because I almost didn't go. Right after he asked me, there was a moment when I thought, what's the point? Things always end the same way. And that thought was driven by fear. Fear of having to share my story, fear of what he might think once he knew, and fear of being rejected. So instead of putting myself out there, I had gotten really good just shutting things down before they ever had a chance to go anywhere. If a guy showed any interest, I'd tell myself it wasn't worth it, so I wouldn't engage. And I'd done that over and over again. But this time, I decided to take a leap of faith and went anyway. Not because I wasn't scared, I was. I hadn't even thought about dating or anything that would come of it, but the fear was still there. I just didn't let it get in the way. And if I allowed that fear to take over, we wouldn't be together today. That's what courage looks like. It's not some big dramatic moment. It's those small decisions where you choose to move forward even when your mind is telling you not to. It's saying yes to the coffee. It's having the conversation. And it's allowing yourself to be seen even when it feels uncomfortable. And here's what most people don't realize. Confidence, that doesn't come first. Courage does. Confidence is built after the fact. It comes from doing the things you weren't sure you could do and realizing that you can. And every time you choose courage, you reinforce those new beliefs you started to build an awareness. You start to see that what you once thought wasn't possible actually is, that your future isn't controlled by your diagnosis, but instead it's shaped by what you're willing to do in spite of it. That's why courage matters. It's what takes everything you became aware of and it brings it to life. Now, I want to get into acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean you like having herpes. It doesn't mean that you're happy about it or that you would ever choose to get it. For me, it took years to fully accept my diagnosis and the decision that I made to be with someone who had it. And I'm going to be honest. There were times I found myself going back and forth in my head, replaying everything and trying to make sense of it all. But what I eventually realized is this. Fighting the reality of what is wasn't going to change anything. And I want to be very clear about something. I don't regret the decision that I made to be in that relationship. It was a choice I made, just like my boyfriend chooses to be with me, knowing my situation. I understood the chances at the time, and my boyfriend understands them now. But just because you make that kind of choice doesn't mean you want or expect everything that can come with it. And that's where acceptance comes in. Because at some point, I had to stop running from it. The more I tried to push it away or pretend it wasn't there, the more attention I gave it. And the more it stayed front and center of my life. You've probably heard the saying, what you resist persists. Well, that's exactly how this works. Acceptance was the moment I stopped arguing with reality. It was saying, this is part of my life, but it doesn't define me. It doesn't control me, and it doesn't get to decide my worth. Acceptance isn't about giving up or settling. It's about making the choice to stop putting your energy into something you can't change, and instead putting that energy into how you want to live your life moving forward. And once I got to that place, things started to feel different. And looking back now, I wouldn't change a thing. Because of everything that I've been through, I've learned so much about myself, what I can handle, what I'm made of, and what I'm capable of. It pushed me to speak up, to share my story, and to connect with people in a way I never would have otherwise. It made me stronger and more grounded, and for that, I'm truly grateful. This is what acceptance looks like, not pretending it didn't happen and not avoiding it, but making peace with it so it no longer controls your life. Let's talk about choice, because at the end of the day, this is what everything comes down to. First, you have a choice in how you see yourself. No one else gets to make that decision for you. Not your friends or family, not a potential partner, society, or the stigma. You do. From there, you choose how you want to move forward after your diagnosis. When self-doubt shows up, you have a choice. When fear comes up around dating or intimacy, you have a choice. When that voice in your head questions your worth, you have a choice. Everything is literally up to you. You can either fall back into the same old thinking or you can start choosing something different. Because what happens in your life from here on out isn't decided by your diagnosis. It's decided by the choices you ultimately make. So the real question is this. Are you going to let herpes define your life, or are you going to decide how you want to live it? Because every time you choose differently, you reinforce a new belief. And over time, those choices create a completely different experience. And it's what gives you the life that you actually want. So let's take a second to break down everything we just talked about. Awareness shows you the story. Courage is where you act in spite of it. Acceptance is where you make peace with what is and choice is how you live it every single day. And when you start putting all of that together, that's when things begin to feel different. Not because your diagnosis changed, but because you did. Well, that's all I have for today. I hope you liked this episode. If you haven't subscribed yet, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on audio, be sure to do that so that you don't miss out on future episodes. Also, if you're tired of navigating your condition alone, come join us at Herpes Wellness. Our free membership gives you access to a private community with forums where you can ask questions, seek advice, and help other members along their journeys. And if you're ready for more connection, our paid membership gives you full access to the community, including a group and love connection chat lounge with AI matchmaking, direct messaging with other members, plus a bunch of other really cool features. You'll also get access to my 10-part workshop series, Shift Your Mindset About Herpes. This is the same series featured on the podcast, but now I'm taking each part and turning it into live monthly workshops so that you can apply what you're learning in real time and start seeing real shifts in how you think, feel, and move through life. If you want support on the go, you can download the Herpes Wellness app for free, available in both the App Store and in Google Play. The links to our website and the app are in the description. And if you're concerned about privacy, we've got you totally covered. The app icon and push notifications say H Wellness. So if someone happens to see your screen, you won't disclose your status unintentionally. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast or if you have something you'd like to share, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you the next time on the Herpes Wellness Podcast. Bye for now.